Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is Election Edge, Friday's edition, 6 o'clock back east, 3 here on the West Coast. Another insane week in presidential politics, and if that wasn't enough for you, we've got bombs going off in Lebanon. We got Kamala Harris talking about how she's going to secure the border after not doing it for 3.5 years. Jason Bermas, welcome to Election Edge, Friday afternoon. It just gets crazier and crazier every day that goes by. Right is left, left is right, upside down is right side up. Try to make some sense of this. I know you have a show making sense of the madness, but boy, this is crazy stuff going on right now.
I know we're also going to be talking about the United Nations later, but on top of all the things that we're talking about, we never touched on this show, and it's something I talked about on my other couple of programs, the Summit of the Future, that was actually a predecessor last week to this assembly. So that actually took place or shored up the day before Joe Biden stepped out there looking very feeble, very unimpressive. But the bottom line is, Mark, you talked about what's going on in Lebanon, Beirut, with Israel. I know that you'd want to talk about the fact that Netanyahu got booed there and some people walked out. I'm no fan of Netanyahu. I'm no fan of the UN. I got to tell you, it's a lose-lose for me all the way around. And the thing that is really concerning is this Summit of the Future was a true power grab. I know there were a lot of people out there that were concerned about this pandemic treaty that was going to go through the World Health Organization. Well, I would try to remind people that really the World Health Organization is just an arm of the United Nations, which is this conduit mechanism, if you will, for not only what you see on the surface, but global governance. And many nation states, ours included, signed off on a complete power grab. Forget about just pandemic preparedness. We're talking about AI. We're talking about cybersecurity. They went as far as to not only talk about the air we breathe and the water we drink, but space itself. And Tony Blinken actually gave about a 4.5-minute speech. I would encourage people to go watch that. As I've said on this show, Mark, Blinken is really the capable guy of the administration. And when they want something projected, they kind of put him in the forefront. So, yeah, a lot of things are going on surface level and then behind the scenes. Because if you read this pact, this Summit of the Future, and a lot of people love to talk about what? Marxism, communism. It's all collectivism and globalism to me. And this thing echoed that on another level. And really, it was whispers. Again, we're talking about the General Assembly after the fact, and rightfully so. I mean, bombs are going off around the world. And even Trump today was talking about ending these global conflicts and world peace. And as we've discussed both on air and privately, that's one of the reasons, if not the main reason, I'm backing this guy, in the hopes that we can end these global conflicts and not continue them, but continue to escalate them. Mark, what we didn't mention is that Putin gave a press conference also this week where he laid out new rules of engagement for nuclear weapons if he was aggressively attacked by Western nations, the United States, the European nations, and NATO in particular. This is a game changer, man. And I know we've been discussing of it, but I'll tell you what, I'm not super comfortable, jockeying this thing like we're watching a football game, right? I'm not John Madden, and it's not just who wins the Super Bowl. These things actually matter, and it's not just globally with Ukraine, Russia, even our soldiers. These things have economic and social impacts that a lot of people just don't understand.
Well, I'm going to echo what you said about the United Nations. And I mean, I'm no big fan of the UN either. But what happened there today with Netanyahu wasn't shocking at all. Did I expect people were going to walk out? Yes. Did I expect there were going to be boos? Yes, because it is a globalist organization. Look, a couple positive things came out of it. Netanyahu laid into the UN. I mean, he came in guns firing, no pun intended, and he was taking no prisoners. And The president of Argentina lambasted the UN for comments, that they made relative to the success Argentina has had by getting rid of these leftist policies and putting capitalist policies in Argentina. They're experiencing 2% economic growth for following the right economic model and not that crazy leftist model they had. But let's talk about, quote, things going on around the world, Jason. You had those 2,000-pound bombs exploding in Beirut. It was a targeted hit on Nasrallah. The guys run Hezbollah for 40 years. And my opinion is, despite the U.S., and you mentioned Blinken, they were given 1 hour heads up that this was going to happen. And the U.S. and other countries were trying to push this 21-day ceasefire. There's no way Israel was going to agree to something like that, especially with the planning that went into this operation. If you had a chance to take out Hezbollah's, they've already taken out a lot of the leadership, but if you got the top guy and dismantled him, obviously someone else is going to come up from the ashes, but that would be a major blow. And I think the Israelis have reached a point where they said, enough is enough. We're tired of having missiles rain on us from the north. We're tired of dealing with the Hamas situation in Gaza. And I just think I think they've concluded that Biden and Harris are so weak. Biden obviously has no consequence whatsoever anymore. Blinken's been to Israel 10 times to the Middle East. And this happy-go-lucky stuff that Biden talks about and that Harris talks about, oh, we're 90% there on a peace and a hostage deal. No, you're not. You're nowhere near a deal. And they're lying to the American people. They're lying to those families that have hostages because it's not close. Jason, I looked at the approval rating of Netanyahu in Israel and his party. It's through the roof, not based upon what they did in Gaza, but what they're doing to Hezbollah. Then here's an interesting thing, folks. There's other groups in the Middle East, the Saudis in particular. They may come out publicly and say a couple things, but privately, they're tickled to death that the Israelis are taking on Hezbollah. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, this is one step further to all-out war in the Middle East. The Iranians are going to join in. No, they're not. No, I don't think they will either. And the reason I don't think that is because the Israelis know where the Iranians have their nuclear sites. And all it's going to take is one action by Iran, and then the Israelis, they will attack Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran does not want that. So for all the huffing and puffing that I think is going on right now, I think very, very dangerous, potential escalation, yes. But if the Iranians join in and this becomes a full-out war in the Middle East, the Israelis are a nuclear power. They have a lot of weapons that people, can't even conceive. And think about, first we had the pagers go off, then the radios go off, 2,000 Hezbollah sites targeted and hit, and now you have the main building today. Okay, that's one aspect. Then on Russia and Ukraine, oh my God, you've got Harris and Biden actually talking about what Ukraine can do to win the war. That is insane talk. No one in their right mind thinks Ukraine can win the war. The Russians have 1.5 million people in their military. They just called up another 150,000. That's just active duty military. Ukraine's sitting here with 80% of its power gone, heading towards winter. How in the world is Ukraine going to win unless you turn it into a full-fledged war and allow them, those long-range weapons, to attack deep inside Russia? I don't get it, Jason. I mean, look, Trump had a meeting with Zelensky. Okay, you know how Trump thinks. Well, you got to give him something in territory, and who knows what they said in the meeting, but Trump did say he learned a lot from it. But is my confidence level high that the Biden and Harris administration can do anything? No. And God forbid that she beats Trump in the election, then it's going to get even worse.
So let's go back to the Iran thing for a minute, because that's really what worries me, right? Because again, Lebanon, Iran, they have a relationship. You talk about Hezbollah, also a political relationship there. And the other thing that's really upsetting me is the fact that even Trump, and I believe fallen for this trap, is listening to what those around him are telling him about Iranian assassination plots. Now, is there a possibility that there's some assassination plots via Iran for retribution on Soleimani. I guess I would remain pretty skeptical about that. At the same time, if they were used, and we already heard this idea kind of floated around the second assassination attempt for some reason, and the first, right? About Iran. That just spells, Archduke Ferdinand assassination over the top World War III possibilities, which I don't want to see happen. We've already talked about the fact that I think a third attempt is imminent. Now, I don't know if you saw this in the news because it wasn't widely talked about, but they're also saying at an event with Barack Obama, I believe 2 nights ago, that someone had a gun and breached security at some type of an event. The details were very vague, but they were alluding to yet another security lapse within the Secret Service. I think that may also be by design. I don't know that was kind of like a retribution attack. Again, the details are slim. But with Iran, it's a different ball game, right? Because no matter what Israel does, in that region, they're going to do what they're going to do, right? We've had this conversation a dozen plus times at this point. It's almost the 1-year anniversary. We're, I believe, about 2 weeks out from that. And the United States has time and time again said there was going to be some kind of a ceasefire. It was on the table. Netanyahu and his administration has time and time again, I guess they're not saying it in English, and we're very, very ethnocentric here, but continually said that there is no two-state solution and there is no ceasefire. None of that is on the table. So I'm hoping, again, that Trump meeting with Zelensky, that may be the idea that, hey, you can't stop this train. Trump is going to get in. It's going to be too big to rig. Maybe they can't kill him. This Israeli thing, I really hope and pray that relationship that he has had with Israel and Netanyahu can get a ceasefire going before he takes office, that he says. But I'll tell you this, I don't know if that's even on the table or something that Trump would advertise if Iran gets involved, right? Say there's a third attempt on his life and we don't even have a military involvement against Israel and it's pointed to Iran. Now he's probably going to let Israel just go hog wild, right? And forget about the fact if there is a hot war in that situation and now you have a whole, cluster F in the Middle East. You alluded to the fact that there's this kind of silent relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia. I've talked about this really post 9/11. And you know how skeptical I am on that. But you saw that alliances formed behind the scenes, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East, Israel as well. They kind of didn't step on each other's toes militarily in those regions. So that's another thing to pay attention to. I know that you don't think that Iran would do something. I don't know, man. You poke people long enough and it happens. And I would hate for them to be blamed for doing something that they didn't do, which again, in the post-truth world, in a place where a lot of people want Trump dead, that could absolutely happen as well.
Well, the reason I say that, it's the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And the Saudis and the Iranians are opposite ends of the spectrum. And anything that the Israel had a peace accord. It's called the Abraham Accords with the Saudis. Okay, so that was a big accomplishment of Trump. And my guess is the Israelis are making the following calculation. They know Biden's a paper tiger. He doesn't even have half his marbles there anymore. Trump-Harris election could go either way. For argument's sake, we can say Trump's ahead. Maybe he is, but we'll talk about polling later in the show. But it's tight. It literally could go either way. And so I think Netanyahu's making his bet. Okay, I know I've got an ally in Trump. I've got the Biden administration and the Democrats moving away from me. So if you knew that was happening and you knew that you could accomplish your military objective without having a kowtow to the United States and a brain dead Biden, that's the calculation apparently he's made. And people were thinking, well, he doesn't have the political support at home for this. Oh, yes, he does. Yes, he may not have had great support. 40,000 dead in Gaza. But when Hezbollah's been raining down rockets into northern Israel, and they had to move settlers, literally, people lived there for decades away from that border with Lebanon, I think he just came to the calculation, as did the Israeli military. Now's our time. Enough's enough. We don't get a second bite at the apple. Let's clean it up now. And that's my belief. Now we're going to do this. I'm a little bit past break. We are going to take our break. When we come back, Jason, chew on that one a little bit, and then we want to get on to this Harris border fiasco here. Folks, it's just incredible. I mean, well, anyhow, cover it after the break. See you in about 90 seconds.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we're back. Hey, gold's almost $700 an ounce now. It's up $200 in the last month. All right, Jason, one of the reasons gold is up $200 more at record highs because all the stuff we're talking about right now. So I gave some pretty ominous predictions there, warnings, if you will. Let's wrap up the Israeli, Iran, Saudi, Lebanon. Let's solve the Middle East problem and then move on to Comrade Kamala's border play here.
I wish I had something to solve it other than at this point for me, right? It is blind faith that we can somehow get to November, get Trump in, get him sworn in January, no global catastrophes that escalate this beyond the point of World War III, right? I'm hoping, Trump's talked about it. He's talked about nuclear weapons, all these things that are important. And you and I often discuss on my show, the military-industrial complex stocks, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman are through the roof. They're big time. So with that being said, let's move it to immigration because in conjunction with this show, Mark, I've taken a couple days off of watching some of this stuff. I watched the full Kamala Harris MSNBC interview. And the first thing I want to start is how the interviewer framed immigration in this country. Okay. That she framed it as though everything that's going on is perfectly legal. And she said to Kamala, what do you say to those in communities that say that there's been now enough legal immigration and now it's too much? They're at their capacity. What world are we living in that anything that we're watching right here is legal? It is open and arrogant treason, and it is a raping of the system. And then it goes right into the talking points because you know why that question was asked. It was so that Kamala Harris could repeat the same thing for really only about the dozenth time because she doesn't do a lot of speeches or interviews, that somehow some magical bipartisan bill was out there. Donald Trump told Republicans not to vote for it, and that would have solved the problem. It's real easy to solve the problem, Mark. You enforce the laws on the books. Full stop. That's it. You simply enforce the law. I mean, they're on the books. There is no reason we need new laws. Really, if you want to solve the problem, and this wasn't part of the bill, you decouple the border from Homeland Security immediately as you not only downsize, but you get rid of Homeland Security. It has been probably the worst of the worst outward bureaucracies and quite frankly, martial law, police state style grabs in this country of anything, and continues to do so. And quite frankly, when it is inverting the reality of our immigration system, because for those not politically around long enough to know, pre 9/11, we had a border patrol, wasn't perfect. People certainly came over. We didn't stop people, process them, give them credit cards, fly them across the country, and give them homes. All right. I don't know what else to say. It's so over the top when I have to even watch that type of conversation, because you know damn well, Mark, it's not people in communities worried about legal immigration. I was actually surprised that they didn't use the term migrant, but I think they did that because they didn't even want to muddy the water of the legality of all of it. No, it's legal immigration now. That's the new talking point.
You know, Harris is openly advocating for amnesty for illegals. Why is that? To get millions more Democratic voters and a pathway to citizenship for illegals already here. I mean, these numbers that came out from ICE today, this is data from the government, folks. You know, we have 7 million people that were, quote, arrested at the border. There were 2 million gotaways. Those are people who just ran away from law enforcement. They couldn't do anything. So we got 7 million that are, quote, scheduled for court hearings. How long is that going to take? 5, 10 years? Then they came out and said there's 425,000 criminals that are part of those people arrested that are in this country. 425,000 criminals. And of those numbers, 13,000 murderers and sex offenders. I mean, that's who Harris and Biden have let into the country. And then you think, well, why are they doing this other than obviously what we just talked about? Well, a lot of people are saying we need labor in this country. Americans won't do these type of jobs. Maybe some truth to that, but clear violation of the law. And now she goes down to the border. And what you said a few minutes ago is spot. Listen, if they wanted to close that border, the executive office, the presidency, has the authority to do it. But Jason, they're not, excuse me, but they're not doing it. So when the president slash, is it Biden or is it Harris? According to Biden, you know, he assigned everything to her. So she has the ability to do something about that border now, and she hasn't done anything in 3.5 years. And this insanity going, I mean, all the crime that's happening in these cities, New York City, 70% of the crime is attributable to the illegal aliens. No wonder Eric Adams got indicted, because he was fighting Biden and Harris. And what do? They trumped up some ridiculous charges against the guy. And now he's facing federal charges for stuff that goes on every single day in Washington, D.C. and in cities all around the country. So again, that's later in the show. Hopefully we'll get time to talk about that. But this is really astounding. Here you have the border czar going to Arizona today. Why is she going? One of two reasons. Her polling numbers are not that great in Arizona internally, and she knows it. Trump's leading everywhere across the country on solving the immigration problem, stopping it. And yet, here she is. She's down there, and she's going to advocate, I was tough as a prosecutor. You know, we need to fix the border. We need, you know, and folks, under the existing laws right now that Biden put into place, nothing happens until, if there's less than 2,500 people a day coming across that border, nothing happens. They just come right across. Only when it's above 2,500 do any actions even happen. So Jason, notwithstanding the sympathy you've got for having to listen to Stephanie Ruhle do a softball interview with Vice President Harris, that, by the way, was not live, it was edited. Again, get this woman to do any live things anywhere. It's just terrible. But that is where we are. And this is still a hot button issue, Jason. And I think, again, Trump's out there pounding the table every day on it. The American people they're watching what's happening here. And I just can't believe that people are going to say, yeah, Harris, she can do a good on that job, that border. And, we need to fix the existing problems. I mean, come on, they're her problems.
So one of the things about that section of the interview that was very telling is there was no focus on the economic impact that you just talked about, right? But then at the tail end of the interview, when they were talking from the heart, Mark, when she had questions from the heart, they talked about the economic impact of not allowing a woman to have an abortion. As if that was the real economic impact of that situation. I got news for people, all right? And I hate to put it this way, but actions have consequences. And if you think that somehow, some way, someone that continually has abortions is going to have some kind of an economic wonderland financially in their life, they probably don't have a lot of discipline. And I'm going to guess they not only don't have a lot of savings accounts, but they're also probably on government programs. That's the reality of the situation, because anybody with means in this country who still wants to get an abortion, Mark, guess what? They can go get an abortion. It's really hasn't been repealed state by state in many places. There are restrictions on the number, but again, they make that into an economic impact. That is absolutely absurd. No, there are real economic impacts when you have policies of shipping people in who then not only are taking from the system that people are paying into, but as you alluded to with the crimes, and crime has gone up, again, even though they're telling you it has gone down, where you can steal less than $1,000 and not even going to charge you. Or if you do get caught, they're going to let you go that day. These policies are over the top. And let's talk just for a second about a realistic path to citizenship, okay? I could get on board with a program, Mark, where you showed me someone who was in this country and paid taxes for 10 years and did not take one government entitlement program. That's it. If you did that, you're on the table. Well, let's figure out and fast track you. I'm sure by then you could probably get by on some English. Maybe you don't know the history of the country like other naturalized citizens. We can give you an online course, okay? I wonder, and ask yourself, how many of those, and I'm not saying there aren't hardworking people out there or even immigrants that have been longer, but how many of them actually have done that, which is the baseline for the vast majority of us in this system? Been around 10 years, paid taxes all 10 years, didn't take from the system. I mean, baseline, that's kind of the citizen I want, right?
Yeah, that's reasonable. Something like that. Sure. But I don't think the Democrats would agree to something like that, because you'd have such a narrow sliver. I don't think that it fits with their objectives.
And dare I say it, those people that they might naturalize might not be voting Democrat, as they've been paying
Correct.
taxes and working hard. Call me kooky.
That's the problem with your theory. It makes some sense, so Democrats wouldn't do it. I mean, look, you had her out there today. She talking about strengthening the asylum system. Come on. I mean, she's part of the administration. And that's what's so crazy about this. Even people in Arizona, border state, they've had it up to their ears with this stuff. And so she goes down there talking about we need better control measures at the border. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. You created this problem. You have the ability to solve it. You have the reins of power, you and Biden. Oh, by the way, Biden did say he delegated everything to her. And yet the media just goes along with this. no problem, no foul. We need these workers. You can't treat people this way. No, you're a bigot, homophobe, whatever. To me, Jason, it's just crazy. It makes no sense. All right, wait, look, I'm past the break time. We're going to take a break. Look at this, folks. We've solved the Middle East problems and the immigration. No, we didn't, but we put the spotlight on it where it belongs. So be back in 90 seconds, and we're going to talk about some other hot button issues. Can we have more? Of course we can. See you in 90 seconds.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to thepatriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now.
Hey folks, I got my Donor Deck right in here. If Trump wins this election, these are going to be collector's items. Whether you pick up 1, 10, 100, 200, scroll down to Election Edge, click on it, it'll take you right to the Donor Deck, and you get the commemorative coin with it. This is going to be great stuff, folks. And all the net proceeds go to conservative charities. So, Jason, back, and before I get away from Trump, Zelensky, and the border, just a couple pointers here. You have to appreciate the optics of Trump and Zelensky today at Trump Tower with, again, the Russians trying to kill Zelensky, Zelensky standing next to Trump, and Trump talking about his friendship with Putin and his ability to bring this war to a close. Now, the one advice, Jason, I would give Trump is, please, Mr. President, let's not talk about you running foreign policy before you're inaugurated on January 21st. We have something called the Hatch Act, and if you start doing that, you'll start your presidency under fire again like you did in 2017. So let's wait till you're actually inaugurated before you start solving the global problems. Second, and I knew this was coming, it just galls you. So Harris goes down to Arizona. And Jason, the first pictures I've seen show Harris meeting with Border Patrol agents and strolling along what looks like an impenetrable fence, razor wire, it looks like 20, 30 feet stretching for miles. And it gives you the impression, first impression, well, if we've got this, what's going on? Why are all these people coming across? I mean, they're literally, her first pictures were in front of an impenetrable razor wire, 30 foot high. I mean, help me out with this, not to regurgitate to our prior subjects, but these are the first pictures coming out. And I'm like, oh God, here we go again.
Well, when we look at those things, first of all, I am for a wall. And I don't think it has to be a big spooky thing either, right? I mean, obviously certain places got more wall than others under the Trump administration. But, you know, let's go to FDR. A lot of leftists love to go to FDR, favorite president. I have some issues with him, but Works Progress Administration. That was giving people government jobs to build things. In fact, in some of the towns that I've lived in, there are still WPA symbols on the sidewalks. Pretty old at this point, almost 100 years. But that shows you that you can build something that lasts 100 years with government funding and money. And I believe that you could not only make that wall across the entire border, but at places that are more tourist zones, crossings into large areas, there's no reason that you wouldn't want to commercialize and welcome people in those areas once securing the actual border. Think about what an economic boom border areas could be if they were actually secure. This is something I've never heard the left or the right really talk about. And I think if we talked about it in that manner more, instead of this spooky thing is like, get them out of here, keep them out. No, let's make this financially viable. Let's discourage illegal immigration and border crossing. And then let's have that integration of border areas. But once again, you know as well as I do, that's not the plan. And unfortunately, I think for me, this is another aspect of America destroyed by design. I mean, not just economically and politically, but also culturally. They don't want us to have a cultural identity. And quite frankly, Mark, for so many years, although there was always subgenres and sub-identities, for the most part, that camaraderie when you would walk into Madison Square Garden and watch the Knicks, didn't matter if the guy in front of you was a Haitian guy, the guy behind you was an Asian, the lady next to you was Hispanic. You're all rooting for the same team, right? There's that Americana culture. So I don't see why we couldn't have that in our border states. But with the process we have now, I know why we can't. Because what does it have? It brings crime. It brings, again, divisiveness within those communities. And like you said, it brings, I guess, political motives. Of course, she's going to stand in front of the wall to give this idea. She's tough on the border. They're going to figure it out. Let me tell you. And again, that is a projection, because I guarantee you drive 60 miles in either direction on that border, there ain't no wall. And in fact, you might find agents, border agents, Homeland Security, local law enforcement, etc., whoever's tasked to do so, allowing migrants to come in and not stopping them, but processing them, Mark.
Yeah, that's all they do. I mean, how do you think we have 7 million that have been arrested, waiting court case in this country, over 400,000 criminals and 13,000 murderers and sex abusers? I mean, that in itself should be enough to disqualify someone from the top office in the land. But no. Democrats applaud it, and any effort to restrict it whatsoever, by God, they're against it. Well, Jason, late breaking this afternoon, to return to sort of domestic policy, if you will, Comrade Kamala has threatened to use blocking the filibuster to approve abortion legislation. Now, that's going to be a pretty tough task to do if Republicans win the Senate. It's not going to happen. But the idea that we would do away with the filibuster that has worked for a long time, it's frightening to many people, which is why Manchin and Sinema are not supporting her. If you can do it for one issue, you'll do it for others. And Mitch McConnell has warned of that for years. Remember when Harry Reid played the nuclear option and McConnell warned, well, we're going to get even with you one day. And sure enough, they did. But here again today, late breaking, before we came on the air, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, not exactly a conservative, but among the most liberal senators in the Senate, he's come out with this scientist of a plan to add 6 justices to pack the Supreme Court, increase the number of U.S. judges, U.S. district judges, add more Democrats to the appeals process. I mean, it's a blatant attempt to pack the court, and yet Ron Wyden throws it. This isn't just an idea. He actually crafted a bill for the Senate to consider inside 40 days till an election. Jason, we've warned our viewers and listeners. What would happen if the Democrats won the White House, controlled the Senate, and controlled the House? This is what would happen, and yet it would be on steroids.
Well, let me just say this. Under the Biden administration, there was always that lurking fear of packing the courts. Luckily, it just kept getting floated around. I don't know if they had the political power to actually get it done where it wouldn't be immediately repealed if put into place, and you did have political parties change. That being said, you talked about the filibuster. One of my favorites, actually. And for those not familiar with what really happens, we had a bit of it, I remember Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and several other Republicans up there just, reading from the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Mike Lee may have also been amongst those senators. But I've always loved the filibuster because, listen, hopefully I'll never have to get in national politics. But if I do, Mark, I'm in it to win it. And I can only see myself on the floor just ranting and raving with every breath possible as long as I have to stop some kind of tyrannical bill or regulation put into place, right? I mean, you talk about these things. There's a reason that we've had them for so long. And getting rid of the filibuster, we already have a system right now where I feel like so much of the Senate and the congressional power has been extremely truncated, right? And I hope that's something that Trump addresses getting in there. He's got to take Ramaswamy and the warning of the administrative state extremely seriously. And quite frankly, I think he is, right? I think that the people that are moving people to vote, I was just watching Charlie Kirk with Ramaswamy engaging young people on a rather liberal Pennsylvania campus. That's what you want to do, right? You want to have civil discussions with people that maybe aren't politically engaged or naive and politically engaged, or motivate them to get them out there. Because I've said it time and time again, people that have voted already know who they're voting for. But those young people that have registered for the very first time, they might be able to be swayed one way or the other with an interaction, with a conversation, with a piece of information presented in the correct way, Mark.
Listen, I've been around Ramaswamy quite a bit, spent some time with him in Mar-a-Lago. This guy's sharp as a tack. I mean, young guy, well-spoken, can communicate well, independently wealthy, did really cool businesses. You want to listen to people like that. I mean, if Trump wins, will he be part of Trump's cabinet? Probably will, rightfully so, because he's sharp as a tack. So I hope these young people would listen to a guy like Ramaswamy. But, you never know. But if you can, in a race that's going to be so tight in Pennsylvania, I've said it all along. I think Pennsylvania decides the election. I said it long time ago. I mean, we're going to talk state polls, and we're going to get into where we think the race stands after our break here. But again, you can just put it up on a platter. Harris has a lot of issues in Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about that. But if Ramaswamy at all can be in Pennsylvania and sway some voters, that's a positive thing for Trump, because he absolutely needs that state to win the election. Okay, final break. Be back in 90 seconds.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to thepatriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House. And the donor deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to the Patriot.tv store and get your donor deck now. Have a new product or idea? Whether it's already in production or just a concept. Whether you're an individual, a small business, or a medium-sized company, our upcoming show on Patriot TV is here to showcase it to millions and launch it in a big way. We're looking for businesses like yours to feature your product on our new show and pitch it to over 6 million followers, eager to support like-minded businesses. Whether it's a single product or a new product line, we have a platform to skyrocket sales. With powerful Patriot TV ads, targeted direct mail, and the influence of our dynamic show hosts, your product will get the attention it deserves. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Email us now at advertise@patriot.tv to secure your spot and watch your sales take off.
And we're back. All right, Jason, we're in literally the final less than 40 days until Election Day. A lot of people are already voting. We've seen some positive trends that Republicans are stepping up at a much greater pace in the early voting. That's good news. Again, where do you sense this race is now? Harris got some favorable polling over the last couple days. Trump, it looks like Real Clear Politics, she's up by about 2. Swing states, dead even. How are you seeing this race? And are they pollsters doing the same thing they did in 2016? Are they having a difficult time uncovering Trump supporters in these swing states?
Again, from what I see in a free and fair election, Trump dominates. Every time I see a group of people of color in a swing state and they talk to these people, they have basically the same thing to say about Harris. Financially, they don't trust her. She doesn't answer the questions. Again, watching that debate, MSNBC led with the economic questions, right? And then they played like soft, tough guy. Well, the voters really still think that Trump's economy was better, et cetera, et cetera. And she continually cannot give you a plan. Instead, it's the assurance that your taxes won't go up unless you're making $400,000 or more. Yet, when she's asked whether or not the tax cut that Trump put into place, which we're a year away, it expires next year, whether or not that tax cut is going to get extended, it's crickets. Trump has said day one he's extending that tax cut. And then it's the same rhetoric on the economy, right? And I think that people read into this. She says, oh, it's the billionaires. They've got to pay their fair share. Wait a minute, $400,000. That's not billionaire level. What you're talking about is taxing small businesses and franchise owners, people that own real estate, an exorbitant amount, and you're going to leave the billionaires alone. Let's be honest about this. But there's nothing honest about that campaign. So, look, Mark, I think it's a good sign that Trump is meeting with people like Zelensky. I think it's a good sign that he survived 2 assassination attempts. I think it's a good sign that InfoWars, as we know it, is at least going to be on through Election Day. It actually has its first auction set on November 13th. And as to who buys it, you're really going to find out whether or not InfoWars is going to continue as a media outlet or it's going to be shut down, because I think there is going to be a real bidding war, not just between parties, but people with certain political motives as to whether or not they're going to try to shut that operation down. Now, that's on, I believe, November 13th. So I hope, I think we should all hope within 10 days we know who the president is, right? But don't be surprised if it takes 48, 72 hours for a media declaration And if that media declaration is not Donald Trump and it's 72 hours, I think you know how this plays out. Now you got an operation like InfoWars under the gun, whether or not it's there. And really, December is the liquidation of all assets. So, I've said this before. I worked there. I was there as I watched that transition from, a smaller studio into AMD's old studios, and then him even building out further than that. Even with that, Mark, I'm a huge tech guy. I'm surrounded by technology, little widgets and cameras. $10 million, even with all those fancy screens, maybe 15 million. It's not going to be the $1+ billion they want in these settlements. So, that's the other thing. No matter what happens here, I hope this is a lesson to, people in this country, no matter where you lie politically. This was about shutting down a media outlet and a man's voice in America. It was not about restitution. It wasn't about fairness or defamation or any of those things. Because if that was the case, it would have been a reasonable judgment. There would be no reason for these auctions. And quite frankly, a sum of Jones's profits every year would have gone to those family members to the tune of probably millions of dollars, right? Not tens and hundreds of millions to get to that billion. Because again, this was about censorship. And if that domino falls, Mark, that one right there, I don't know where we go as a media sphere. So, look, I think you're right with Pennsylvania. I think that once again, the focus has to be on the younger people that have never voted or people that have never voted in the first place. And then we have to be ready to audit this on a level that maybe we never have before. And I, for one, know that I'm going to go kicking and screaming if I see corruption.
Well, you had a couple of other legal issues that were actually settled this week. In addition to what you just referenced, Newsmax had a settlement with the Smartmatic, the voting machine company. That was scheduled to go to trial, and Chris Reddy, the CEO, announced that they'd reached a settlement. Again, that another organization the Biden administration is certainly no fan of, and a lot of conservative outlets. Again, it's very important, folks. Again, you have to have balance in your media. And one thing that the liberal left would like nothing better to do, they'd like to get rid of all conservative media. They don't care. Their positions are so hardened. And Trump's bad man. And, this Trump derangement syndrome that goes on. Look, even that appellate judge panel in New York, who in their right mind, that judge, $450 million of damages that Trump was assessed, that's likely to get overturned. Look, some of that stuff is going on too. But back to the election. I think she, Vice President Harris, I think she's got a Catholic problem. She is the most outspoken pro-abortion person I've ever been around. I mean, it's just insane. It's not that that's a litmus test for Catholics, but, when she doesn't show up to the State of the Union, to Netanyahu's speech before a joint session of Congress, when she doesn't want to go to the Al Smith charity dinner hosted by Cardinal Dolan in New York that every presidential candidate dating back to the one that didn't attend, Walter Mondale, has attended. I mean, is she that lack of self-confidence that she can't even attend a charity dinner? Come on. And I think people in Pennsylvania, and whether it's the fracking issue, whether it's more African Americans voting for Trump, the Hispanic vote going towards Trump, silent Trump voters, I think that Trump will win Pennsylvania. I feel he's going to carry North Carolina. He's carried it twice, despite the baggage from the governor of North Carolina. I think he's ahead by a couple points in Georgia. I feel confident about that. Michigan, no real feel, likely leaning Harris. Wisconsin, too close to call. Arizona, slightly Trump. Nevada, too close to call. The point is, Harris is leading by 2 points right now, Jason. At this point in 2020, Biden was up 7. He won by 4. Hillary Clinton was up by 2.7. She won by about that much, but lost in the Electoral College. So I think right now this is Trump's race to lose. The polling, very, very tight. Everything, Marist poll has Trump 50-49. CNN had her up by a point. New York Times had it tied. Fox News had her up by 2. Rasmussen has Trump up by 2. I mean, Insider Advantage, Trump by 1. Trafalgar, Trump by 1. If this race, and I've said it, I'm going to say it again tonight, if Donald Trump gets 48.5% of the vote, there's going to be about 1.5% go to the other candidates. Jill Stein, Cornel West, the third guy, whatever his name is. So that could mean Harris could win 50, Trump 48.5. I got news for you, folks. If he's within 1.5 points, this is going to be an electoral landslide. Now, if she wins the popular vote by 3 points or more, could be very, very tight depending on how it falls. But Jason, I concur with you. It's Trump's race to lose right now. He survived the assassination attempts, survived a coup of Joe Biden, survives everything. Lawfare, indictments, fines, assessments, character assassination, Trump derangement syndrome, media against him, academia against him, former government officials against him. And yet who's for him? The people. So, that's how I see it heading into, the last, 5-6 weeks of this. But Jason, I really think this is important too. The Republicans are going to have to vote early. They're going to have to match that Democratic ground game, because you and I both know Democrats are pretty damn good at getting their people out and voting early. That's how I see it right now. Your thoughts?
I don't think you're wrong about the early voting. For me, the mail-in ballots, the early voting, it's against my moral compass. I think it's one of the first things that needs to be eradicated and not endorsed if Trump is able to get in there with election reform. The biggest issue, of course, being the machines, having these companies out there, proprietary software, no audits, etc. I want to believe it's his to lose. I really think also you've got to watch out for that third assassination attempt. I think you also have to worry about false narratives involving assassination attempts. And then on top of that, the wild card, that kind of flew into my mind as I talked about Alex Jones in November 13th. Well, we've got November 27th or 28th when the sentencing for that New York case is supposed to occur. Let's say Trump gets in there and then they sentence him to 2 years at Rikers Island. All of a sudden, it's a whole new world. There are so many weird and bizarre wild cards in this one and dice to roll. I don't know where it goes. I think that the media at least is going to play it extremely close over the next 4 or 5 weeks because they have no choice really, because I think that, again, Trump is very much up there. But I'm fully prepared to watch them try to steal it right in front of us, Mark.
All right, we got less than a minute left. And you could be right, but I think if he's elected president, he's not going anywhere. So vice presidential debate on Tuesday night, is it going to matter? J.D. Vance has been doing pretty well lately, and Waltz is just a liar.
I mean, I'm going to watch it. I would imagine just watching both of them speak, J.D. Vance is going to wipe the floor with this guy. But we'll see, right? I mean, this is the first time where Waltz is going to have to really stand on his own in direct competition with his direct competitor. And, I think that he's already kind of anchored a lot of those Harris interviews and interactions. So I don't think he's going to do that badly, but I still think Vance pulls ahead.
Have a great weekend, my friend. Making sense of the madness, Monday through Friday. Have a great one, Jason. Election Edge will be back on Monday, folks. See you then. Have a great weekend.